You certainly don't stand a chance when you have trains going down a track at 79 miles an hour and you cross one and get hit. You don't stand a chance of survival. There's absolutely none. It's a devastating thing when you have to go through something like this, and what makes it even more devastating is when you have to get out there after you lose somebody that you love and fight for railroad safety as we have done.
Car-train crashes are not only the most preventable type crashes there are, but they're also the most deadly. If a train hits a car, your chances of being killed are 30 times greater than if you get hit by another car.
One of the concerns that an engineer has every single day when he comes to work is he sits down in his seat and he operates the locomotive and he comes to town after town and there's just grade crossing after grade crossing after grade crossing, and you blow the horn, you ring the bell, the lights are on, and the cars just don't stop. They just keep crossing in front of you, and you hope that they make it, and you hope that the rest of them get stopped.
Ohio is a major transportation crossroads in this country. Ohio has 31 railroads, and then when you take almost 10 million vehicles and over 7 million licensed drivers, the potential of collision when they meet at 6,300 grade crossings in this state is the reason why we have the high crash potential.
The more crossings that we have in a community, it's a form of playing the lottery. The more crossings, the greater your risk of being injured or killed. And that's one lottery that we don't want us or our families to win.
In the United States, there's an accident every 90 minutes. That's about 14 a day, and we think that's too many. So the states and the railroads get together to try to eliminate accidents in any way we can, which includes closing redundant grade crossings. What we look for are crossings that are very close together, where you could feasibly close one and send a motorist to an adjacent crossing without too much inconvenience. In places where that exists, we offer different kinds of incentives to the community to get their cooperation or agreement to close a crossing. Those incentives can include a new surface at the crossing that's going to stay open, or gates and lights at the crossing that's going to stay open, or as you can see behind me, landscaping improvements, different kinds of barricades. We work with the community to give them what they think they need to accomplish the closure.
From an engineer's viewpoint, crossing consolidation is very important because it cuts down that extra chance for somebody to have a crash. Maybe instead of going across a crossing that has a crossbuck and there are trees and buildings and maybe it's just not the greatest crossing to get across, maybe now that traffic will be on a crossing with a nice new smooth surface and lights and gates to warn drivers so that we won't have people pulling in front of our trains all the time.
I think the railroad crossings are really no different than a river crossing or a bridge crossing. You need them, but they need to be part of a plan because each one is a potential accident waiting to happen. You want a limited number where you can have good controls, be they gates or flashing lights on a railroad or something so that you can work with the vehicles to maintain a controlled, safe environment. The more crossings you have, the harder it is to do that.
The Boyd's Corner crossing was dangerous because it needed to be upgraded. It needed flashing lights and it needed cross guards. And of course that would be an expensive project. Knowing that this was declared a hazardous crossing, knowing that there were 5 accidents in the last 8 years, knowing that this was not a well-traveled crossing, the decision wasn't hard to make to close it. Especially hearing from the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio that they were going to improve a crossing 4/10 of a mile down the road at the cost of $150,000.
To my knowledge, there had never been a fatality at this crossing, but there had been several close calls and there have been a couple of minor collisions where a vehicle was clipped at this crossing. With the heavy traffic through the city, we were concerned that there could be a serious accident, a death, and the possibility of a derailment here that would have not just the potential for serious personal injury, but with some of the chemicals that come through town on the rail lines, that the possibility there could be a derailment that could result in an evacuation. We think we've improved the safety for the city, the local residents, and the plant, as well as the train crews coming through here. In effect, we've created, or helped the city create a cul-de-sac for the neighbors here There's less traffic on their road, it's quieter, it's cleaner without the truck and the vehicular traffic.
One of the advantages we feel to closing these crossings is the fact that the train whistle does not blow at those crossings now. And we have a lot of crossings in the city limits, and at times it seems the train is constantly blowing the horn all the way through town. And we feel now that we have 5 locations now where the train will not be blowing the horn, and that does positively impact the neighborhood.
I think to close crossings that have not been properly graded and have not been properly maintained is a benefit to everyone. Not only can you lose a muffler going across these things, but you can actually stall on some of them. They're so steeply graded you could actually scrape bottom on some of them if you had a heavily weighted pickup truck, for example, with a long bed on it. At farm equipment, they just would not dare use these crossings. So anytime you can close one of those, that's a benefit to everyone. And if in the process you can somehow get those crossings upgraded that are more heavily traveled, well, then you have a double benefit to the village, I think. There was some negative reaction from the village residents who were at those crossings that were closed. It would create a problem for them in that they had to go another block to get where they wanted to go, which of course to us was a non-problem in trying to fix this situation.
I've been to city council meetings and listened to people that literally would have to go 1/2 of a block, and they think that's too inconvenient. And I'm not trying to be condescending to anybody, but I think that's a ridiculous reason.
We need to be responsible citizens too. The neighbors who live next to the track, the people who have to go around an extra 1/2 a block, they have to be responsible too. It is their responsibility as citizens, to give up some things. It's better giving up 30 seconds than it is somebody's life.
I not only feel that this project will make our city streets safer, but I also feel that it will not disrupt our transportation system. We're always concerned with east-west movement of our ambulance and fire trucks because they're on the east side of the tracks, and so they have to cross the tracks every time we have something happen on the west side of the tracks. We're satisfied that those commitments can adequately be met even though these crossings are closed.
Upon talking to the fire chief, we asked him to take his fire truck and go down over one of the crossings because we didn't think he could clear. And he did clear, but he had to go very, very slow. So the question to the fire chief was, would you use this crossing? And he said, only if it was the only crossing open, we could get across it. Well, I can't imagine an accident that would allow only that out of 13 crossings open throughout the city of Bowling Green.
Traditionally, we look at things and closures as negative and that we don't want to do them and that they're going to affect our response times. And I think that we need to take a second look at them, a very serious look at them. And when you do that, I think you find that it doesn't affect the response times as much as you may initially think.
Findlay's a rather unique situation, I think, in that the town is about 5.5 miles long, and we have a Conrail Railroad, former New York Central, which runs parallel to Main Street all the way through town. So we have more crossings, I think, per capita than maybe any city in the state of Ohio. There was one at almost every street all the way through town. We did have a number of crossings that had no protection. We had a number of crossings that had lights but not gates. And we had a few that had gates. And now we have every crossing in town has lights and gates. When it came time to look at the actual ending of the street where there had been a crossing, what was done was based somewhat on the right-of-way that was available. Some of these streets were narrow 40-foot right-of-way. Some are a little larger with 50 or 60-foot. When you have a little larger right-of-way, you can do a cul-de-sac situation. There's a couple where the houses are close to the railroad right-of-way. There wasn't much you could do at all. And also some elevation differentials that makes it very difficult. Those ended up being T intersections.
I think the Norfolk Southern project, I can't emphasize enough that it gives both safety, it leads to both safety, as well as it gives some good returns for the city. You know, roughly $100,000 worth of projects that we don't have to invest $100,000 into.
We got the busy train route done with Conrail. And now to see that they're working on the Norfolk Southern project, I think is a logical follow-up step.
We put an extremely high priority on safety. If there's a stop sign down, we're out immediately to replace it. If a citizen falls because there's a problem with a curb or a sidewalk, we're out immediately to fix it. And that is a standing order in our department to respond immediately to safety problems.
Public safety comes first in Stark County, and if by closing a railroad crossing we can ensure public safety, we'll do it. Sometimes it is controversial, sometimes some of the neighbors don't want to go the extra 4/10 of a mile, but we say in Stark County that if we can avoid an accident, it's worth it.
When you look at the role of an appointed official or an elected official, three words come to mind almost every time, and that is health, safety, and welfare. Safety is one of those key issues. So in performing our duty, we have to look at safety as one of the facets of any project that we undertake. Sometimes those projects may not be the most popular, but if you've done your homework and have created a situation where everybody gets something out of it, a win-win, if you will, then you have to do what you have to do. That goes with the territory, and it may not always be 100% popular, but you got to do it.
Ohio has made great progress in reducing grade crossing crashes. In fact, they've become a national leader, reducing crashes over 10% a year, even with an increase in motor vehicle traffic and train traffic. And closures are certainly a very important component in this progress that we've made.
A locomotive engineer that's going through any city or town, and we see that a crossing is being closed, it's almost like a little bit of a burden has been lifted off our shoulders, because once again we know that we're still going to have crashes somewhere in the state, but we know that at that particular location we're not going to hit a car and nobody's going to die.
Somebody had wrote my daughter a poem, and one of the verses said that we must now affect the lives that she is unable to touch. And that's what we have to do. You know, we need to be heard on this issue, and we need to be committed and dedicated to this issue.
We knew we were going to save lives by doing this, but we didn't know whose life. And we all have to just assume that it could have been our kid or grandkid that was going to be up next. So now we hope that that's not going to happen ever again.